I'm Enton Eller, and I have the privilege of being the host for the technical host for these Ventures courses. And I am so delighted to have so many of you with us here today for this special course about the McPherson Welcomers Group and resettling refugees. And so I just want to begin by sharing a little bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to them for the rest of our 2 hours together. I'll start by saying that the Welcomers Group began in the fall of 2022 when several members of the McPherson, Kansas Church of the Brethren came together to sponsor and assist Ukrainian refugees that were coming to the U.S. And a year later, the group is 18 members strong and has assisted 17 refugees since their beginning, currently sponsoring 9 in the McPherson area. The congregation, in its turn, has provided financial support and donated items to furnish homes, help with English classes and job applications, and a lot more. But we're just delighted that this group has come to share with us about how possible it is, when you choose to do it, to be able to sponsor refugees, because that seems like a huge task that many of us aren't sure how we can accomplish. And yet this group has shown just how easy it can be if you're willing to just join together and do that. So I'm going to turn it over now to Carolyn Schrock, who's also a member of the Ventures team, but part of the Welcomers Group, to sort of introduce the group. So Carolyn, over to you. And Carolyn, you just muted yourself, so I'll let you unmute.
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Anton. The McPherson Welcomers are so pleased to be able to share our welcoming experiences with you today. As Christians, we get our call to resettle refugees from Scripture. Leviticus 19 instructs us to welcome the stranger. It reads, "When the alien lives with you in your land, do not mistreat him. The alien living with you must be treated as one of your native born. Love him as yourself, for you were aliens in Egypt. I am the Lord your God." The United States has always been a nation of immigrants. In my lifetime, my various congregations have welcomed displaced persons after World War II, Vietnamese and Hmong in the 60s, refugees of African wars, and those fleeing Central American uprisings. Currently, there is a huge number of displaced persons around the world, whether they're in their countries of origin or across neighboring borders. Though it is a difficult decision for them to leave their home areas and move to a new place where they can feel safe, thousands do choose to do that. Our purpose here today is to share with you our experiences of bringing Ukrainians to McPherson, Kansas, and to assist them in finding their own self-sufficiency. We have found it doable, and yes, you can do it too. I'll turn the mic to Nancy Magnell, who has been our main leader in this process.
Thank you, Carolyn. If we can go to the next slide, please, Anton. So our journey began in August of last year, so we've been at it just a little over a year now. By then, the Russian invasion was 4 to 5 months old. Everyone was concerned, but what could we do? I saw a small article that was titled "Connect with a Ukrainian," which briefly described the Uniting for Ukraine private sponsorship program. I sent an email to our outreach team, which I was a member of, and asking, do you think we can do this? The next meeting, we decided, yes, we can do this. We did not ask that it be an official church project. Outreach recommended that the church offer moral support, but not be in control of the project. Next slide. So the next thing we had to do was to commit to sponsoring and forming a support circle. It was one thing to say, we're going to do it, but another thing entirely to determine specifically who is willing to be involved and how are we going to make it happen. So I contacted others that I thought might be interested, beginning with our Sunday school class and the outreach team. We ended up with a core group of 18 people who were on board and have remained involved ever since, plus many, many others who have helped us in various ways. We were guided in large part by a host of fact sheets. Do you want to show the next slide, Anton? And other information that is available on the Welcome US website and other sources. You will see one of them displayed here, and I will reference many others throughout the presentation. But the next question was, where will the finances come from? You can back up to the previous slide, please.
The call came, but I pressed some wrong button.
Although there is a fact sheet with sponsor fundraising tips and tools, we never fundraised per se. We just felt that our group and our congregation could do it, that people would step up as they had done for other projects in the past. I remember Roger Schrock saying something to the effect of, at some point you just trust that God will come through. And this has happened to a greater extent than we could ever have imagined. After some months, the church did set up an account where we could receive donations and disperse funds, and they have provided us meeting space and other support. But the effort continues to be directed by our McPherson Welcomers sponsor circle. Next slide. So we had connected with a family of 4 through the Welcome Connect website that I will explain in detail shortly. After some discussion, we agreed to sponsor them. In early December, my husband Paul and I drove to Dallas to pick them up. We had to meet them in Dallas. Why we had to meet them in Dallas is a story for another time, involving their dog and regulations for animals arriving in the US from other countries. We hadn't yet secured housing for them, so we moved them into our small house. While we spent our days together, we went to our son's house to sleep overnight. The day after they arrived, a friend of theirs who had already immigrated to Houston from the Ukraine said that he had housing and a job lined up for them. We talked for a long time about the situation, and we eventually agreed that this was an opportunity they could not pass up. So they arrived and left in one weekend. Most of the people who had joined us and worked so hard to arrange for their arrival never even met them. So there was much disappointment and some guilt on my part, as this was my idea. I had brought a lot of people on board to help, including school personnel who were waiting to welcome their 2 children, and now this wasn't going to happen. We decided we'd take a pause until after Christmas. We are still in contact with this family. They are doing very well in Houston. So there is some satisfaction that our group was instrumental in bringing them to safety in the United States. Once again, after the first of the year, it was Roger Schrock, who I call the encourager, who said, we need to try again. And so we moved forward after our initial disappointment. The second family, which we now refer to as the first family because they were the first to arrive and stay in our city, could be called a match made in heaven. And there is a picture of them in the corner. We have blurred we've blurred the faces of all the Ukrainians in all the pictures that we share so that they cannot be identified because they still have family members in Ukraine who could be in danger. We could not have asked for a better family to work with. They are personable, accomplished, hardworking, motivated, and it doesn't hurt that they have 2 adorable little girls that we all have fallen in love with. The father is a born leader. Their presence in our community has been an absolute joy and blessing. Next slide. Our Ukrainian community has grown in the months since that to include 3 households, and we have a 4th family whose arrival is pending their approval to travel from our government. All have some connection to our first family. They were either childhood friends, previous co-workers, and those connections have helped form our little Ukrainian community. Next slide. So we want to say to you, you too can do this. We will walk you through the process and show you the resources that are available to help you, including the numerous fact sheets that I have already mentioned. You will be able to get a list of all of those fact sheets and other resources I share and where to find them as part of the handouts from the training. So don't feel that you need to write all of this down. You will also have access to the PowerPoint slides. I do want to proceed with the caveat that we are sharing our experience based on the rules and regulations that were present at the time that each of our newcomers arrived. Even as we have been preparing for this presentation, we received information that some things have changed with our government, and some of the benefits that were available to our newcomers may not be available to future newcomers pending action by Congress. We are providing the best information we have at this time, but please be aware that some things may have already changed or may change in the future. So we want to begin this section of the presentation by sharing a short video from the Welcome US website. If you could show that now, please, Anton.
Imagine it.
Okay, so that gives you a little preview of kind of what we went through. Many of those scenes looked very familiar, especially moving the furniture, unrolling the carpet in the apartment. We went through very similar things as you saw in that video. So let's talk now how about you could get started on your own sponsorship journey. And we're going to do that by checking out information on the welcome.us website. So I'm going to share my screen if Anton can give me permission to do that.
Should be ready now, Nancy.
Okay, thank you. No, that's not what I want. I'm
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, I knew this would happen. We'll just go to it again. We did practice this yesterday.
So Nancy, you're actually showing us how to get to the actual website. That's all part of the plan.
Yes, that was my intention all along. So here you can see now, I think, the welcome.us website, which is where you can connect with potential refugees. This is just, I can't say enough about this website and the resource it is. If you are interested in doing this, you can see all the different bars at the top showing you a little bit about who welcomeus.us is, how you can become a sponsor, more ways you can help, resources. That resources tab has been invaluable to us as we have been working through the process. News and stories, the little video clip we just watched, you can find it. So, but what I really want to move to next is this little dot bar that's called Welcome Connect. And I'm going to scroll down here. I mean, there's lots of information right there, but we're going to log in to Welcome Connect. And as you can see, McPherson Welcomers has an account here. We had made a profile on this website when we started our journey. And we're going to log in. And once you have a profile on the Welcome Connect website, you're going to be able to see all of this. So here's what happens when you get to the Welcome Connect website. And you can see across the top, there's to-dos, there's connections, support, language. You can change this to show in any of those languages there. And then you can see our name here because this is our account. So as you can see, there were no to-dos left on our list, but you can see here the things that you would be expected to do if you're going to form a support circle. At least one person in your group needs to complete an online training that's available on this website. It is a very incredible training. I would recommend that as many of you as possible do that. But you have to have at least one person do it. The main thing I want to show you here is under this connections tab, because that's where the magic happens. So after you have set up your profile on welcome.us, it goes up, and then refugees who are seeking sponsors can see all those profiles. From our side, we cannot see the refugee profiles, but they can see us, and they can ask to connect with us. If they read our profile and think, oh, maybe that's a place I would like to go, or people I would like to sponsor me, they can then say, you know, they want to connect with us. So as you see here on the left side, these are all individuals or family groups that ask to connect with us. And then once they send you a request to connect, it's up to you to decide if you want to have further conversation with them or not. So just as an example here, I'm going to go down and select this family, because that was one of the families we spoke with as we were deciding who we wanted to sponsor. So you can see each family puts up a profile here telling a little bit about themselves. So let's just read about this family. It says, hello, we're a family from the Kherson region of Ukraine. Unfortunately, due to current circumstances, our hometown is now occupied. Our home has also been occupied by Russian soldiers who now live there. Our family consists of the four of us, my wife, my two sons, and myself. My wife and I are both 28 years old. Before the start of the war in Ukraine, I had a business growing watermelons. My wife has her own business as a baker as well as a manicurist. We identify ourselves as Protestants branching out into Christianity. I think that didn't quite translate correctly. I think he means the Protestant branch of Christianity. Our family has liberal views on life, which we have come to know are not welcome in other countries, but are in the United States. My wife and I also have recommendations from our work where we are currently at in Czech Republic. Our family worries about the safety of our children and their future in peace and prosperity. We would like the best for our children and for them to have better opportunities in America than they could in the Ukraine due to the war and disruption of the economy. My wife and I are part of a service in our church. Natasha plays the piano in the worship group during service. We're both active and help in Sunday school as well. This also includes being volunteers in the church, helping others in need of time, summer, winter camps, and group meetings during the week. Thank you for your time. So each one of these people will have written up a little synopsis like that of themselves, you know, giving their age and their family background. As you go down here, it says the number in the family. They apparently didn't understand the question of number of adults because there were only 2 adults in that family, not 4, but there were 2 children. The ages of the children, did they have any special needs? No. Did they have any pets? No. We found out that was important to ask after our experience with the first family. But then after you have read the profile, you can decide, do we want to have further conversation with this family? And as a group, we had decided, you know, this was a family we might be interested in sponsoring. So then we started a conversation with them. And I'm going to go down here and you can see. So after reading this profile, my first response to them was, hello, we're interested in having a conversation with you to learn more about your family and determine what type of community and living situation you're looking for. And they responded, hello, thank you for your reply. We're looking for a sponsor because we need to get our documents. We have friends who are also went to the USA with this program. They will help us with housing for the first month and with the job search. Thank you for your time. So it was obvious they already had people here. So we needed to know, okay, it sounds like maybe they're going to want to relocate where those friends are. So I responded and said, hello, where are your friends located? It sounds like you're planning to resettle where they are. You have a beautiful family and it sounds like you're doing lots of good work through your church. And they responded, and this all happened, you know, in a matter of a day. We had these conversations back and forth. Hello, thank you for your reply. Our friends are located in the state of Washington, in the city of Bellingham. We would like to move to their city because they are our good friends. They have already passed the migration path, so they will be able to help us. Sorry for the mistakes. I'm using Google Translate. Actually, the Welcome US website translates for you. After you type something, you can put translate, or if a message you get is in another language, you just click on translate and it does it immediately. It's quite amazing. So anyhow, I responded then, it's good that you have friends who will be able to assist you. That will make it easier for you. We're hoping to sponsor a family who would like to move to our town in rural Kansas and make their home here. This area of Kansas has a history of welcoming Ukrainian immigrants from the last century. So many families in this area have Ukrainian ancestors. We wish you good luck in finding a sponsor to help you relocate to Washington. So that turned out not to be, you know, a good match for us because they wanted to go to Washington State. So then you can just close that conversation and you can move on and look at other families. So you can have up, if I recall correctly, you can have connections with up to 7 families that you can be talking to at any one time to, you know, go back and forth and determine if, you know, you would like to sponsor them and they would like to sponsor you. I would recommend not doing that many. We never connected with more than 2 or 3 because it's really hard to tell somebody that's wanting, you know, sponsorship in this country that, well, no, you know, you're not a good match for us, or no, you know, I don't think you're a good fit for us. So, you know, we tried to limit the number of people we were talking to at any one time. So as not to have those situations where people will get their hopes up that maybe, you know, you were going to sponsor them and then it didn't work out. Just a second, I got to get back to where I was. Okay, so after you've had this conversation back and forth, then you jointly decide whether you want to sponsor them or not. So this is a good time to talk about your initial expectations from both sides. After our experience with the initial family who went to Houston, we made it clear that we expected anyone we sponsored to come to McPherson and stay for a period of time, which was undefined, but we both understood it would be at least long enough for them to complete all the initial paperwork and obtaining their Social Security cards, their work authorization, etc. Keep in mind that the newcomers always retain the right to make their own decisions. So this required some level of trust, you know, on our part and on their part, that we would both follow through with the commitments we had made. So if you decide to offer them sponsorship, there then is a little button that you would push. Those don't show up because these are all people that we've closed, that, you know, either didn't talk to ever or closed the conversation with them. But if we had been in an active conversation, there's a little button where you push that says offer sponsorship, and then, you know, you proceed from there. So the next step is then that you fill out a U.S. government form called I-134A. And Anton, if you could go to the next, oh, I need to stop sharing, don't I? Excuse me, here, let me get that done. Doesn't seem to be there.
Would you like help, Nancy?
Yes, I need to stop sharing.
Okay.
And the button does not seem to be down there. What am I doing wrong?
Let me see if I can help you with that.
I'd appreciate that. Or we're going to be stuck here for the next hour and a half. There, thank you.
You're welcome.
And yes, so could you go to the slide now that shows the top of that form 134A? Yes, perfect. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul, my husband Paul, for just a minute or so, as he is the one who filled out this form for all of the people that we have sponsored. This is quite a lengthy form. It's 14 pages. It looks scary at first glance, but it's really not. It's pretty straightforward. So Paul is going to talk to you just a minute about that.
Okay, to start the process, an I-134A application form will need to be completed online at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, which we will use the initials USCIS for that, for each member of the family you are planning to sponsor. You'll need to ask for basic information from the Ukrainians. This would include their name, their current address, their telephone number, their email address, and the email address is very important because that's the way they are going to communicate with USCIS, is through their email. So you got to make sure that's correct. They need passport information and information about their financial resources. The basic information for the financial sponsor includes the name, address, social security number, telephone number, email address, again, important for the communications with USCIS, and a listing of financial assets you plan to use to support the Ukrainians. That includes checking accounts, saving accounts, CDs, stock investments, retirement funds, and the amount you have in each of those assets that you're willing to use for support. You must have sufficient assets or income to support those you are sponsoring at or above poverty level for 2 years. That's $13,950 for one individual and $27,750 for a family of 4. There are also 4 essay questions that need to be completed on the application. Number 1, describe the resources you plan to use or provide to ensure the Ukrainians have adequate financial support to cover their basic living needs. 2, describe how you will ensure that the Ukrainians' housing needs are met. 3, describe what steps you plan to take to assist the Ukrainians learn English, secure employment, enroll children in school, and enroll in benefits for which they are eligible. And 4th question, why should this beneficiary be allowed to come to the U.S. under this program? You have limited space on the form for your responses to those questions. So, you have to gauge accordingly. You will also need to upload some information for them to take a look at, which includes electronic copies of the documents supporting the financial assets you plan to use, like bank statements or from your retirement funds or other things. You will also need to have a copy of the passport of the financial sponsor. You'll need to have a copy of the last income tax return, the Form 1040 that you filed, that was filed by the financial sponsor. And you need a signed statement from an employer regarding salary, length of employment, type of employment, if the financial supporter is currently employed. Once you have carefully reviewed the information included on the I-134A form, you will submit it electronically from the website. There are no right or wrong answers to those essay questions. And there is no standard really for the required amount of financial assets that are needed.
Okay, so that was just a brief overview of what will be required in order to submit that form. So you submit it, and then that's when you can start looking at the resources you have in or around your community. Oh, Anton, could you please go to the prepare to welcome the newcomers slide? Sorry. So you research the resources within or near your community, things like employment, housing, English language classes, and more. It's a good time to start looking for what housing is going to be available in your community. And this has been one of our biggest challenges throughout this whole process. Like many other communities, suitable housing can be hard to come by. And even for some of the housing that was available, we found that traditional landlords were reluctant to work with us for various reasons. And we'll talk about that in a little bit down the line. In the end, we found out that it was helpful to leverage existing connections that we had. I made an announcement in church that we were having difficulty locating housing for the family. And after church, one of our members, who was a retired contractor, mentioned that he had a friend who was remodeling a rental house, and he connected us with that gentleman. Can you show the next slide, Enton? So here is a picture of the house, which the first family occupies. It has 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, no basement, but a big fenced backyard. The family loves it and continues to care for it with pride. 3 of the 4 homes we have located are single family, middle class, neat and tidy homes. The 4th is a roomy 2-bedroom apartment occupying the main floor of a larger home. Each home was prepared for the new arrivals with a little work and a lot of love. I have to stop here and share a story, an interesting story of something that happened after our first family had moved in and we were getting ready. The next 2 households arrived very close to each other. So we actually were preparing 2 different homes at the same time. And one of the members of our McPherson Welcomers group became aware that there was a group of ladies in our town, mostly retired ladies, who cleaned as a ministry. They volunteered in situations where houses needed to be cleaned for whatever reason, and they came and they cleaned thoroughly the house that our 3rd family was moving into, which it was not particularly clean when we first saw it. But these ladies came in and did their magic. Did the whole, the first floor had 2 bedrooms, living, dining area, and a kitchen. They cleaned that. There was a separate little apartment in the basement. They cleaned that. And even though the family was arriving within a matter of days, they decided that some of the paint could really be updated in that house. So they asked if they could go out and purchase the paint and paint the interior of that house before the family arrived. So that was just one of the amazing things that happened. And then they went on and cleaned helped clean the other house too, that our 2 single guys were moving into. So that it was just interesting that the different things that popped up of ways that people in the community helped us. So in addition to housing, Enton, can you go back to the one that says travel approval is received in the new, nope, just a minute, that's the wrong one, excuse me. Yes, that one. You need to assess what potential employment opportunities might be available in your community and what employers might be willing to hire someone who is an English language learner. Your newcomers might need to start out in entry-level positions depending upon what kind of English language skills they have. One of our newcomers was a pharmacist in Ukraine and very well educated, but obviously she did not have the credentials needed to practice her position in this country. She is working on that, but she started out as a paraeducator in one of our schools, which obviously was far beneath what her education would normally warrant for a job. But now she has since been offered a better job at a Pfizer chemical company where she will be actually using some of her skills. And she's also working on getting her pharmacist license in this country. So, you know, you need to help them determine what kind of jobs might be available for them based upon where they're at the given time, but understand that their first job doesn't have to be their last job. It's an entry point for them to get into the job market. You also need to check on the availability of English as a second language classes in your resources in your town. We found a local English class, which they all attended over the summer. Some of us ended up helping with that class. Local community colleges can be a good resource, and there can be online options. We also have some members of our McPherson Welcomers group, which are individually providing weekly English classes for some of our newcomers. You also need to make school contacts if the children are involved, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. So these are some of the things that you can be researching while you're awaiting travel approval for the people you want to sponsor. This is also a good time to work on your welcome plan, which will detail how you're going to accomplish the tasks required to welcome them. There is a nice form that you can use for that has sections for you to detail how you're going to obtain housing for them, how you're going to obtain employment for them, how you'll find the English language classes for them, contacts you'll make with the school. It's just a good tool for you to use. So I want to stop now for a brief time and see if you have questions about anything that we've covered so far.
Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. As I was listening and trying to keep up by taking notes with amazing information, I'm guessing that somewhere in the links that you'll be sending us, it'll be clear which of these are only, geared towards Ukrainians, like the USCIS sounds like its own. Okay, thank you.
No, that is the Form 134A is for any refugees that you intend to sponsor.
Oh,
Not specific to Ukrainians. Also, the welcome.us website is for any refugee. We're going to talk towards the very end of the presentation about different ways you can sponsor beyond the Uniting for Ukraine program. There are a whole host of ways now that you can do private sponsorship here in our country, and we will talk about that later, okay?
awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yep. Any other questions? No? Okay, then, Anton, if you can bring up the slide that says travel approval is received and the newcomers arrive.
Coming right up.
Thank you. So this is when the real fun begins. There's no standard time for how long it's going to take from the time that you submit that I-134A form to the government until you get notice that they have been approved to travel. In our experience with the newcomers we have brought, it varied from 1 week. It was approved in 1 week, which shocked us. That was our third family. To more typically would be a month or two. But now this family of 4 that were awaiting their arrival, we've been waiting 4 months for approval for them, and they have not gotten it yet. So you just don't know. The family is the one who, or the individual, if you're sponsoring an individual, is the one who receives the approval notice via email with instructions on how they are to proceed. You will just get a notice that there has been, it's called a change in the status of your case will appear when you check on it. So then you will need to contact the family to verify that they did receive their approval. And the family then makes their own travel arrangements with input from you, the sponsor, about what would be appropriate times and locations for them to arrive. If you have not already done so, you should ask if they need financial help for travel, because many families will. We did not, none of our newcomers that we have brought to this point needed financial help with their travel arrangements, but it's possible that they might. And we just learned that welcome.us does now have some grants of up to $3,000 that are available to help with travel for families that don't have the means to finance it themselves. I don't know any more about that other than I just saw last week that those were now available. So that would be something to check into if you sponsor someone who does need some help. Then you need to determine which airport they will arrive at and how far you are willing to travel to meet them. Can you do the next slide, Anton? So our newcomers have arrived at 3 different airports for various reasons, not counting the initial family that we went to Dallas to pick up. So the first one came to the very small airport at Salina, Kansas, about 30 minutes away from us. The second group came to the very large Kansas City airport, which is 3 hours away. And the third group came to the medium-sized Wichita airport, which is 1 hour away. As you can see, we met each of them with a welcome sign. Our connections began immediately, even with some language barriers, and their gratitude at arriving safely in our country was obvious. So the next question is, who is going to meet them at the airport and transport them to their housing? So these airport arrivals can be very special. I'm going to ask Tina Burkholder now to share briefly some of their experience with picking up 2 of our newcomers in Kansas City. Go ahead, Tina.
Okay. Initially, I got the idea of becoming even more involved by kind of taking on the lead with the 2 single guys that were coming. Steve and I helped Paul and Nancy pick up the first family, and the immediate bonding and the promise to help them settle was very moving to me to watch. And so I asked Nancy if perhaps Steve and I could do the second group that's coming. So that's the picture of them. They're right there in the middle. The problem was they were coming into Kansas City 3 hours away, and their flight was little before midnight. So it was obvious we were going to have to stay all night. So in trying to, first of all, conserve money, and then secondly, just the discomfort of having to get motel rooms for them, I asked if it was possible for us all to stay all night at Steve's sister and brother-in-law's house. And that's a picture of them at the house. Got permission from the in-laws that they would open up their home to all of us. And so very, very late at night, we arrived at their house, and they already had sleeping beds for them in the basement, air beds, and of course, a wonderful breakfast in the morning. And they're both very welcoming anyway. And I thought it was just a really nice way to introduce them to the United States. Because they're wonderful hosts, I felt fine about that. But it did occur to me while it was happening and then afterwards about how much trust those 2 single guys had to put in us, that the first thing they were going to be doing is staying all night in a stranger's home. But by helping them over the next several months, and still helping them even today, the close and regular contact has really made them feel like family.
Thank you, Tina. Anton, can we go back to the slide that says travel approval is received, and we'll proceed from there? Thank you. So one thing that changed after this arrival that Tina described is that we realized that it was a good idea to divide up the responsibilities of being the go-to people for each couple or each household. So Paul and I continued to be that for our first family. Tina and her husband Steve took on the responsibility for the second household, and Ann and Phil Stover volunteered to be the go-to people for the third household. That doesn't mean that we have to do everything for that household, as we all have busy lives and other responsibilities, and we're not always available to help when it's needed. But we do step in and help each other with appointments and other needs, along with other members of the support circle and people outside the circle who have all played a role in welcoming our newcomers. After they arrive, you are expected to greet them with a culturally appropriate meal, as it's referred to. This is one of the expectations to help welcome them. We made borscht, which I don't think any of us had made before, a hearty bread and a Ukrainian apple cake to welcome them. There was a funny incident with the third group to arrive. They had a late night arrival also in Wichita, and Paul and I had picked them up. We brought them back to the house that we had prepared for them. And since it was late at night, we gave them just a quick orientation to the house of the essentials that they would need to know to get through until the next morning, and told them that we would be back in the morning to give them a tour of the town and more thorough orientation to the house. Another member of our support circle had made a kettle of borscht, which we had put in the refrigerator for them, intending that they would have it for lunch the next day. When we arrived the next morning to give them a tour of town, we told them that there was borscht in the refrigerator for lunch. They exclaimed, "Oh yes, we ate some last night and we had the rest this morning. It was so good." So things don't always go according to plan, but the bottom line was they did have their cultural appropriate meal, just not at the time we intended that they would have it. You also need to do a safety orientation of the home. Show them how everything works, the light, the heating, the air conditioning, the smoke detectors, stove, microwave, other appliances. We made a little booklet for each household that had all the contact numbers for our group, information about how to call 911 with pictures of a fire engine, an ambulance, and a police car. And we gave them a map of the city. And Paul also had taken pictures of the important buildings around town, and we put those in the booklet with labels of what those buildings were so that they would recognize them when they saw them. You also are expected to ask them when they arrive if they need any cash, any pocket money. Even if they have money with them, most of it likely will not be in dollars. So it's suggested that you ask if they need help with some cash for their immediate needs. And if they do, it's suggested that you give them $200 per adult. So can we go to the next slide, Anton? So then we're going to talk briefly again about housing. These pictures here are of our first family arriving. This was just I think the day after they arrived. The neighbors came from across the street, and there was a number of elderly neighbors in this neighborhood where the first family lives, and they were curious about what was happening with that house during the time that it was being remodeled. And so they learned that there were going to be some Ukrainian refugees coming. And this couple was so excited. They came right across the street the next morning to introduce themselves to our family. And there they are on the front porch. And I wish you could see the faces in the middle picture, because that is just a beautiful picture of the mom in the family gazing into the eyes of the elderly woman that lives across the street. And they both just have this precious expression on their face. And so this was, the welcome to the neighborhood, which we didn't plan, but it just happened spontaneously, and it was just beautiful. And the last picture there is of the two little girls when they went to tour the elementary school where the older one would be attending, and sitting on a little bench with a little statue out in front of the school. So I'm going to ask Paul to talk just very briefly about rental agreements and leases, because that's obviously something you're going to need to be involved in with the newcomers.
Okay, so securing housing may be a challenge. You need to get to know about your housing market. The housing should be clean, safe, and affordable. You need to use your networks to find potential housing. Ask, when you talk to the landlord, ask about the amount of the rent, the maximum occupancy, the security deposit, and the associated utilities. What are the terms for the return of the security deposit? Is a cosigner required? When can the cosigner be removed from the lease? What is the process for early termination of the lease and associated penalties? Because sometimes they may want to move before the end of the lease. Is there a possibility for a shorter lease or a month-to-month lease? The McPherson Ukrainians are in houses rather than apartment complexes at the current time. We found it easier to have the lease, over time, we found it easier to have the lease include the utilities. There was difficulty in getting the utilities in the name of the Ukrainians when they have no credit rating. And so the last couple of houses, the utilities are included in the rent payments at the current time. We had trouble working with traditional landlords because they were not familiar with working with refugees and so forth. And we were able to find landlords, though, working through our networks, that were willing to help the Ukrainians. I did sign the leases initially as the financial sponsor and a co-sponsor, because one of the things is you might have to sign the lease before they even arrive, so you have a place for them to stay. And then later on, once they came, then we were able to have them sign the lease and switch it over to their name after they arrived. Was there other things?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
If you have questions about that, we'll have a time in a bit that you can ask. So then you also are expected to furnish the houses. We have had nearly everything we needed to furnish 4 households donated from people inside and outside of our church. We found that people are eager to help. And there is a fact sheet that lists what furnishings you are expected to have as a minimum in the house. You also are expected to stock the kitchen with initial groceries, and there's a list of suggested foods you should have in the house when they arrive. This should be enough to meet their needs for the first 2 or 3 weeks while they're there. Transportation. Can we go back to the tasks after arrival, Enton, please? Transportation is also something you're going to have to consider. In our case, we provided bicycles for all the newcomers. In addition, a bike cart for the 2 little girls to ride in. It's really cute to see their parents pulling them around the town in the little cart. And they have managed quite well with the bikes to this point. With winter weather approaching, that's going to be more of an issue. You need to orient them to your city and to public transportation if you have any sort of public transportation available. We do have a public van that's operated out of the senior center, but it's available for anyone to use for $1 per ride anywhere in the city. It does have regular daytime hours, I think from 9 to 3 or something like that, but it has provided transportation for them on different occasions. We bought a punch card for each household that had 20 punches on it to get them started so they could use the public van if they chose. And after they arrived, we gave each of them a tour of the city by car, or in the case of our 2 single guys, they got a tour of the city by bike by a lady who wasn't even part of our group, but heard they were coming and was an avid biker, and she offered to take them around and see the city by bike. You also need to enroll the children in school. Tina is going to share a little bit about what she did prior to our initial family, the one that went to Houston, arriving to make sure the school was informed and prepared to welcome the new students.
So before the first family came, myself and another person, Bev, who's in the support group, we both are retired teachers. And so we understood the importance of the school having a little bit of a warning that they're going to be getting students who may have very little or no English language. And so we went to the central office. We also went to talk to the teacher who is in charge of the ESL program for the entire district. And then we also went to a couple of the schools. This was just to let them know that they would be getting students and also how we could be supportive for them. As it turned out, the second family, Joe's family, that did come, they have 2 children, and their first child is a first grader. And so that's where you saw the picture of she and her little sister getting a tour. And so we also went along with them when they got tours. The important part was just asking, first of all, what kind of services they would be getting. And that very much depends on the grade level. And while we were there, we were fortunate enough to find out that one of the public school teachers speaks fluent Russian and was also willing to be a live translator for us if we ever needed that. Both of the families that did settle who have children got tours, private individual tours of their school with this teacher who translated for them. And it really helped them feel more familiar before their first day of school. This isn't really so much necessary, but I'm a retired first grade teacher who I had a lot of ESL kids. And so I've also maintained contact with the first grader's teacher, and she is sharing ideas of things that she would like me to work on outside of school. And so I'm doing that as well. Not necessary, but if you have somebody in your group that enjoys working with children and could offer some services, it's typically very much appreciated because the child is learning English as well as trying to learn the subject level of their age.
Thank you, Tina. As you can see from the next bullet point, the last bullet point there on the slide, there is a lot of paperwork required when the newcomers come. They are eligible for initial refugee health exams. We had help with many of these things from one of the resettlement agencies, the International Rescue Committee in Wichita, but you can handle all of these things yourselves. So all of them did have initial health exams in Wichita, checked to see which vaccinations they needed. They received vaccinations. Some of the children received 7 or 8 vaccinations in one setting, which was a lot. You also help them apply for their Social Security number. That's just a simple 1-page form that you can find on the internet. And we determined that there were better Social Security offices to go to than others. The Wichita office is incredibly busy. We found if we went to the Hutchinson one, which was just 20 miles from town, we got in and out there very quickly at all the times that we went to take our newcomers for their Social Security appointments. They also have to complete a biometric assessment at the USCIS office, which does happen to be in Wichita for this area. And for the purposes of this appointment, biometrics just means that they get fingerprinted and they have their photos taken, which are used for criminal background checks with the FBI. It's a very short appointment, but it's a very important appointment. They will get a notice of when they're to appear, and they need to appear at that time unless they've made other arrangements. Tina's now going to talk a little bit about language assessment in classes and a few of the other things that she helped us handle. Can you move to the next slide, please, Anton?
In McPherson, we had basically 2 options for learning English. There was a local evening class with a teacher and also some helpers, and it was held at a church. And there was also an online class through International Rescue Committee. And our Ukrainians tried to use both. But we also thought that dialogue was really key to learning English. And so we did a couple of things in the homes. We started having small group gatherings in the homes, and I taught them using curriculum that International Rescue Committee recommended. And then we have 4 adult men and 2 women, and we felt like that the women also needed some companionship with other women, some new friends. So we combined that with the idea of conversation in English, and we started having a coffee group once a week, and we just sit around the table and have coffee and breakfast treats and visit. One of the things that really could be emphasized when it comes to learning English is it's really easy to use the appointments that you're already going to or points of interest that you're wanting to expose them to, and you can use those as opportunities to learn English. So before we went to any appointments or even went to anything fun, we would prepare them ahead of time by practicing questions that they might be asked or vocabulary that they might be hearing to make sure that they understood. So some examples of this would be visiting the doctor, going to the pharmacy, going to the post office to set up your postal account, opening a bank account, even getting a haircut. One of the fun things to do is take them out to eat where they look at a menu, hopefully with pictures, and you can talk about the food before they pick something that they want to order. We included the Ukrainians in our 4th of July celebration and the church's fall festival cookout, and continue to do this. These are all opportunities to learn English as well as the classes in the home that they're having.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Looking at where we're at for time, I'm going to try to move through some of this quickly. We did help them apply for health insurance. They were eligible for, the families were eligible for Medicaid or CAN care. The single men were eligible for refugee medical assistance. That has changed in this most recent situation since September 30th. The refugees are no longer eligible for those. However, that's pending our Congress actually approving a new budget, and it's possible those benefits could be restored in the new budget. We have to make you aware that as of right now, anybody that comes right now does not get all of these benefits that our refugees were fortunate to have. We also help them apply for the SNAP food assistance benefits. We show them how to use the local food bank, which they have all used. Tina took her guys to the grocery store, showed them how to navigate, teaching them how to purchase store brands versus name brands and things like that. We also helped them with their employment applications. They do have the right to work, the Ukrainians do, immediately after their arrival, even before they get their official work authorizations. But some employers were reluctant to hire them until they did get that authorization, which came for most of them at about the 3-month mark after they had arrived. All of our refugees are employed now, and they do all have their work authorizations. They have been a little frustrated sometimes about how long it takes to complete the process to get jobs here in this country, with all the background checks and all the pre-hiring things that have to happen. We have 4 of our newcomers now that have jobs with Pfizer, and it took 3 to 4 to 5 weeks from the time they were actually offered the job until they actually started work, and they found that somewhat frustrating. But during the time that they were waiting to obtain employment, they were very eager to help out in any way they could, and they were a real boon to us in moving furniture. After they arrived, then we had nice, young, strong bodies to help move the furniture, as opposed to the elderly people, elderly gentlemen in our church, including Paul waving his hand here. Roger was one of them, who were the ones that helped move the furniture for the first family. You do need to consider transportation of how they're going to get to work. All of them have obtained their Kansas driver's license, but as of now, they don't have any cars yet, although that's something that they're working on right now. That's something you need to consider is, are you willing to help them obtain a car? We have not done anything as a group except to brainstorm how we can best help with transportation. We have made some contacts with people to help locate suitable cars. And we do have some individual group members who've offered to provide modest loans to individual newcomers if they meet certain requirements, like having some money for a down payment, showing that they have the ability to pay for the insurance and things like that. Childcare, if you have children with families with children who are younger than school age, is something you're going to have to consider. And that can be another challenge in most places. I think childcare is hard to come by. So far, our 2-year-old, the family has been caring for her themselves, and the father is going to start a new job at Pfizer soon, and they are have been helpful in trying to coordinate his work schedule to be opposite of when the mother works. But in talking to him last night, we just realized when he has his initial training, he's going to be working, the training is going to be in the daytime and his job will be in the nighttime, which was going to work fine. But now he and I discussed last night, oh, we're going to need to find some childcare for that 2-year-old when he's doing the couple weeks of initial training he's going to have that's daytime hours when his wife is working at the school. So that's a new little glitch that we're going to have to work out. And also it's important to help them set up bank accounts. We took each of the Ukrainian adults to a local bank and helped them set up US bank accounts, which can be an important step into helping them, you know, get acclimated into your community. We're going to stop now and take some more questions if you have them at this time, and then we'll take a short break. Anyone have questions?
Linda, go ahead.
The amount of information is amazing and mind-boggling, and I trust that we are going to be able to share this recording with others, and that your slides perhaps are available additionally in addition to the recording. And I think yeah, and I think you said there was going to be like a set of links.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. I know this is a lot of information crammed into a short amount of time, but we wanted to make sure you're aware I've never seen a program that had so many resources available to help walk you through the process. So that's what we're trying to help do.
Yeah, Nancy, I have a question about the religious preferences of those coming to the USA. Can you comment or talk about how you're handling that?
Yes, we don't ask unless they share with us what their religious preferences are. Some of them did share in their initial little profile that we saw. All of the newcomers that we have so far are Muslims. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some accommodations we've been able to make for them coming to our town. But if that's an important issue for you, that's certainly something that you would discuss with them, you know, in your initial conversations before you offer sponsorship. Or, you know, then depending upon what's available in your town, do they have, you know, are there facilities that would be able to accommodate their spiritual needs?
That was just my thought about maybe in the McPherson, you have any Muslim.
Well, we'll tell you a little bit. We're going to tell you a little bit more about
that.
That's
fine. Thank you.
Okay, should we take a 5-minute break now and give you a chance to stretch and do whatever, and then we'll come back, and we still got a lot to cover, so we'll keep moving.
Okay, I'll put a 5-minute timer up. Feel free just to mute your mics and cameras and stretch, and you'll see when time's up, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. And Nancy, it's been amazing how well things have been going and how much information you all have been able to share with me. So,
well, thank you. We've got a lot more. If you can put up the blessings and challenges slide, we'll start with that.
Okay, coming up.
So we just want to share a little bit now about what are some of the blessings and some of the challenges we have experienced. The biggest blessing of this whole experience has been the relationships that have developed between us and the Ukrainians. It's fair to say we consider them our friends, and I think they feel the same. Their hospitality is unmatched. We never go to one of their houses without being offered tea, coffee, a snack, or an invitation to stay for a meal. Can you go to the next slide, Anton? Here you'll see a picture of them preparing a special meal for us. On the far right picture, we learned their custom of never returning a pan empty. If we took food to them, when they brought the pan back, it always was filled with something like this delicious strawberry dish here. And I wanted if you can show me on the camera a minute, and I wanted to share this necklace that I am wearing today was given to me by the little 6-year-old in the first family, I think the second day after they arrived. As you might be able to see, it is just filled with precious beads and charms that she had picked out. And they brought so few things with them in their suitcases. This was one of the things that she brought with her. And she gave it to me the second day that we were here. Their generosity is just unmatched. So now we want to give you the opportunity to meet one of our new friends through a video interview he did with Roger Schrock. And afterward, you will have the opportunity to ask him a few questions if you'd like to.
I'll pull up that video right now.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Roger Schrock. I'm one of the welcomers at McPherson that has worked at bringing some Ukrainians into our community. I'm having a conversation today with Joe. We've chosen to use anonymity because we want to keep things private for his family, and we want to make sure there's not retribution for any of his extended family still back in Ukraine. So, welcome, Joe, and I want to ask you my first question. I know that family is important to you, and here in America we've been seeing the war and the destruction and violence on the TV from the war in Ukraine. Tell me why you and your family decided to come to America.
Thank you for your question. My good acquaintance, an American citizen, offered to help us leave Crimea. We met him in Lviv, and I agreed. After that, we started preparing documents and planning our trip. First, we left for a safe place. We were in Ireland for about 8 months. On our arrival in Ireland, when I started to write to my American acquaintance about this program, he stopped contacting with me. So then I started looking for a sponsor through Uniting for Ukraine program for my family. After a long search, I found my sponsor on welcome.us. It is a website. My sponsors were Nancy and Paul from McPherson, Kansas. After our introducing and some correspondence, they decided to sponsor us. And we started the process of filling out of the paperwork. I decided to move to United States as it was a very free and safe place for us to stay. And I was only thinking about the future of my family and my child.
Thank you. What is the most surprising or shocking thing that you found living here in America?
It's more shocks, maybe. The most shocking things for us was a lack of corruption in USA. Well, it was a pleasant shock. In America, everyone helps each other and is very responsive. And because of this, my family feels it like a home. Before our arrival, my wife was worried about the conditions of our standing and about the people who would meet us. But everything excellent. All our expectations. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. And we are happy and give thanks to the people of United States and in particular the community of McPherson who welcomed us and our friends. We are very happy and thanks them very much.
Good. I know that you're kind of a leader in the Ukrainian community. In talking with other people from Ukraine who are now living in McPherson, what do they say is the best part of living in McPherson for all of this community?
I think it should be long list. But I think first of all, they are satisfied with the fact that we Ukrainians are all ended up together in the small town of McPherson. Yes, there was a little culture shock that people here help each other and they are very kind. As you don't know when you come to a new place how you will be treated. But my friends are very satisfied with the care and help that the community of McPherson provide to us. All of us Ukrainians have found a job and we are very happy to that we can support ourselves in the future to be independent. This is the main task of us Ukrainians who now in McPherson.
Thank you. If people who are listening to this conversation were considering bringing some Ukrainians to their community, what advice would you give to them as they think about inviting Ukrainians to come?
Thank you for the question. You know, I can advise people who want to invite Ukrainians that if they have the opportunities, they should help, because we Ukrainians are very hard-working people and patient. Nancy and Paul offered that we would help sponsor another Ukrainian family or individuals. And then I decided to help my friends be sponsored. Unfortunately, there are unscrupulous people who offered sponsorship for money.
Yeah.
My own family was offered sponsorship if we paid a huge amount of money. I think that situation is not good, as Ukrainian people are in trouble and same people do not even have money for the plane fare to leave to country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have people who are unscrupulous in America too.
Yes.
If you were thinking of any other advice or counsel that you might want to give to people listening, what else would you say to them?
Okay. I would like to advise people who listen to this interview to help more Ukrainians. We are living example and many other Ukrainians who comes to America serve as examples too. Ukrainians who come will work and support themselves and help support their army. Thus, you help not only the Ukrainian population, but also help our army to win this unjust war. I want to express my gratitude to America and to the community McPherson and to the people of this country for helping Ukrainians to make our lives safer and better. I want to thank our sponsor for providing us with help in adapting for McPherson.
Joe, thank you and welcome to McPherson.
Thank you. You are very welcome. Thank you.
So if anyone has a couple of quick questions, Joe is on, I think, here and could answer a couple questions if anyone would like to ask him something. No? If not, we'll move on. And there hopefully will be a little bit of time left at the end for questions if you think of something you want to ask him. So Anton, if we can go back to the blessings and challenges slide, please. So another one of the blessings we have experienced has been the commitment of our support group members. From the very first meeting over a year ago, their commitment to making this happen has never wavered. They have all continued to show up for the planning meetings we have had weekly for many months and to offer their help and expertise when it was called for. I now want you to hear from some of them who will each give a short anecdote of some of the experiences they have had with our newcomers. Starting with Roger, please.
Riva, you raised the question about religious backgrounds, etc. One of the things that we were not smart enough to anticipate was that all of our Ukrainian friends came originally from Crimea. And so we found out that they're Muslims. But as you would know, the closest mosque that we have in McPherson is located in Wichita. So we said, how can we provide a place for them to have prayers on Friday for Jumu'ah, the day of prayer for gathering as a community? And so we've offered them one of our Sunday school classrooms, and we now have a mosque on Friday at the church. So that's been one of the blessings that we had not anticipated, but we were able to provide a place for prayers.
I'm not going to say we found out other.
It's
Lois?
Roger, that's quite commendable. And considering the size of your congregation, it's amazing that you haven't had any kind of flack about or disagreement with your offering that. Our church recently is now offering a place for meditation to an outside group. So those are good signs within our communities.
We've advertised it as a place for another family of the Abrahamic faith to meet.
Lois, do you want to share your anecdote?
An undertaking like this works best when the whole village is engaged and on board. As you have heard so many times this morning, the Welcomers Committee has had the privilege of working with a supportive church congregation and a welcoming community. But we have learned this is not a one-way street. And even though we have all this generous outpouring of time, talent, and resources on our end, we have to step back from time to time and receive what our Ukrainian friends have to offer us. As our relationships deepen, we discover much of this knowledge comes in conversation, working, and interacting with them. An example, several of us were planning to be gone last summer for an extended period of time and needed help with the upkeep of our gardens. Upon hearing of our needs, our new friends not only showed a willingness to do this work, but we discovered many of them had a lot of expertise in this area. We are doers, but we have to continually remind ourselves to be good listeners and be sure we are not overwhelming our newcomers with what we think is best for them. But what is the path that is unfolding for them as they live and work in this new, different culture? But at the same time, what do we do to help them preserve their honored cultural values that they brought with them?
I have another one here. Each of our refugees was provided a bicycle to use for town transportation. When one of the teachers of our 8th grade boy noticed that the bicycle was not quite as nice as most of the other bicycles in the rack, she told him that she had a bicycle in her garage that she was not using and asked if he would have any interest in a bit newer bicycle. He answered that indeed he would not mind having a bit newer bicycle. She then got some financial help from at least one other teacher and bought him a new bicycle, which he now rides with pride.
Ann Stover, did you have something?
And you're still muted, so we'll have you unmute and start again.
I'd like to talk a little bit about what Lois referred to in acknowledging their culture. Phil and I have one family that we try to be responsible for, and the woman of the house had the first birthday of the group, and we kind of had planned that we would have a birthday party for her. Their culture says that they throw their own birthday party, and so she invited some guests and baked until 2 o'clock the previous night, making a 21-layer Neapolitan, a Russian Neapolitan cake for her guests. It was absolutely delicious. In addition to a meal that was very good. The other thing that I'd like to just talk about is the 14-year-old boy who is also in that house. His love, of course, is football, which is not American football. It is instead soccer. And so we reached out and found a local soccer league that accepted him. They were so kind to him. You would expect his love of soccer, and coming from a soccer-loving nation, he would have some skills, which he did not. But the team was very welcoming and encouraged him all the time. And he has always felt very welcomed by his peers in this town.
John Schrock?
Hi. Yeah, I, well, a couple of them live just around the corner from us. So I had heard that they were going to be helping another congregation member. And I thought, oh, well, I have helped her in the past too. Maybe I could just talk to them and we could all go together. Like I could help provide transportation for that. So we ended up going up there and working, and that kind of provided a lot of things. I mean, one, just them working and kind of getting to know other people and things, and also then socializing. I didn't really know them before that, and also kind of being someone a little more their age and also more informal. It was, you know, they'd ask me things that they probably wouldn't ask other people who were, you know, that they were around from our church. So it was kind of a little more like just learning the culture, or the, I don't know, social aspects of culture, rather than kind of exactly how things work. You know, what do you say, you know, when you want to talk about this? Or if I use this word, is that okay? Or is that a, you know, not polite way to say things, or at least something I shouldn't say to this person? Or, you know, can I use that just, you know, chatting with people? So some things like that were kind of developed a relationship that they could feel a little more a part of, like maybe more of what is normally kind of their personal lives. And it was a little more, I don't know, friends. I'm sure a lot of other people experience that on about other things too, but this was, you know, things that they probably didn't encounter in other situations. So yeah, just getting to know them getting to know someone a little maybe more informally, or part of a culture, or that isn't kind of this official thing.
Evnai?
Well, my first little story has to do with softball. Joe and his wife signed up their 6-year-old daughter immediately after moving here for summer softball. And no one in their family, of course, especially the 6-year-old daughter, knew anything about American baseball rules. And now the Magnals, they bought her a mitt and showed her how to wear it. And she went to the practices. She observed the other teammates. She her coach. And she figured out many of these baseball rules. And we welcomers, we attended many of her softball games, and we had so much fun as spectators, proud spectators. Her division was co-ed, 5- and 6-year-olds, and coach pitch. And it was such a good experience for her. She always had a smile on her face. Most of us know that about this 6-year-old, but she really had a big smile when she would hit the pitched ball and she'd run with all of her might to first base, or on defense when she picked up the grounder in her mitt and threw the ball to first base. We welcomers cheered and cheered and cheered, and the other spectators, parents and grandparents of her teammates, they became loud fans too. We all loved being a part of her fan club, and I was sad when the season was over. And my next little something I want to share has to do with what Tina was talking about when they went to Kansas City to pick up our second group, 2 young men. And Joe was needed as an interpreter and helper to go along on that trip. But since, like she said, the flight was arriving shortly before midnight, they were going to spend the night at Steve's sister's house and drive back home the next day. Well, Joe's wife was supportive in that she wanted him to go and help, but she was terrified to stay by herself overnight in a new house, in a new town, in a new country. And her English at that time was very limited. So understandably, she was scared. So I offered to spend the night with her and her 2 girls, and she took me up on the offer. I was really honored that she trusted me. And we enjoyed playing games and hanging out, the 2 girls and Joe's mom and I. And I slept on their comfortable couch. And before turning in the 2 little girls, we lay together on top of the couch in a darkened living room and spent, I bet it was 20 minutes. And the 6-year-old taught me all kinds of shadow puppets, because I had my reading light and I turned it on the ceiling. And so we made like a bird and a dog and a rabbit. She taught me, but of course I've forgotten all of them. And we had so much fun. We laughed and laughed. Even the 2-year-old got in on it. And we watched our animals interact with each other. And it was just so much fun. But then it was time to go to sleep. In the morning, Joe's wife made a delicious breakfast. Now, she and I at that point, when we communicated, we used these translation apps. And because her English wasn't that great, and my Russian and Ukrainian isn't that great either. So when breakfast was just about over, Joe's wife, she speaks into her phone and then she clicks and then she hands the phone to me to read. And I read silently, "Would you like to eat more fried testicles?" And I said, "No, thanks. I am full."
Beverly Martin, would you like to share?
Yes, hi, I'm Beverly. I live in the area in a small 1876 Swedish farmstead with lots of old buildings and surrounded by these Siberian elms that had been planted because of the dust storms back in the 40s. Well, basically everything is crumbling, and also my hope and spirit had been really down, just overwhelmed, and I'd been here 10 years, etc. Well, I had started going to the Welcomers Committee because I have a long-term interest in working with folks from other places. And I ended up hiring 3 of the guys who would be and are now in other jobs, but were very anxious to start work, and because they'd been sitting at home and they aren't used to that. Well, I ended up, they don't know this, but I call them the wild and crazy guys. Because they're so enthusiastic and energetic and just a blast to be around. And so, they don't wear disco clothes or go to discos like Steve Martin did in that Saturday Night Live back in the 70s. But, and they're from Ukraine instead of Czechoslovakia. But I have just grown to love working with them. And actually John Schrock was also been helpful. He's come out here and also worked and given them rides, etc. But they have just been so willing. I'm very picky, and even just cutting down trees becomes this huge feat for me. I don't just burn them, and they followed my directions. Like, you got to cut the cedar branches this way because we're going to make furniture. You got to cut the elms this way because we're making a permaculture compost pile. And then these branches have to go to the sheep. And I mean, they just stuck in there and never, they always came back. and again, with smiles and eagerness. And Joe was the leader of the crazy guys. And it's just been such a great experience. I wasn't ready for, and they've been like angels of mercy for me. And so I guess I wanted to say that I really have cherished these wild and crazy guys, and I've totally honored that they've been willing to come back and help me. And I'm humbled by their strength. Sorry, but they've I really cherish them. Yeah, I've just been humbled by their strength and their abilities to rise above and beyond these histories and places they've come from. And they are moving about the world with such courage and hope that I am just so honored to have met them. And I encourage anyone who wants just to know some people that will give you hope. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Beverly.
Yeah.
Anton, if you could put up the next slide that has the pictures on it after the blessings and challenges one. This is actually some pictures of the guys and Joe's family at Beverly's farm. If we can get that one up. Yes, there. So this says, our forum, the adult males did some part-time work. And this was at Beverly's farm. And she invited the family to an outdoor meal. And Paul and I were there. And it was just a great time. Next one, Anton. Another one of the blessings has been the commitment of our support group members from the very first meeting over a year ago. Their commitment to making this happen has never wavered. They've continued to show up through the meetings, and I just can't say enough about them. And here's some various pictures of some of the members of our group. Some of us provided daycare all day for the children while the adults all went to Wichita and did their driving classes. And they've just been a blessing. Next slide, please. We've also benefited from the support of 2 resettlement agencies. They have been invaluable in helping us get the newcomers resettled. That one is the Church World Service has helped us remotely through their remote support, which would be available to you if you set up a support circle. And the other one has been the International Rescue Committee in Wichita, which provided direct support to our newcomers through assistance with the paperwork, helping them get acquainted with the match grant program, which has helped provide financial assistance to help with rent, utilities, cell phones, and etc. It truly does take a village. And our village has included the 18 core members of our support circle, plus our congregation, plus numerous community members, school personnel, medical providers, and more. We just want to share briefly about a few that have been particularly helpful to us and our newcomers. Roger, can you share about Muhammad?
Yeah, one of the things that we found as we were trying to set up a place of worship is that I don't have enough expertise in terms of Islamic prayer. So I turned to my friend Muhammad, and I took him to view the Sunday school classroom that now is the prayer room, and said, do you know which direction is east? And he pulled out his phone, and he has the app that shows exactly which way to point when you're facing Mecca to pray. So I didn't know that, but he did. And then amazingly, as we began to offer a prayer possibility for our Muslim friends from Ukraine, we find out that there are other Muslims here in McPherson. And so we now have an Iraqi family, and we have an Indian family, and several other families. And so that's been a real plus that we were not aware before we went into this process. That we have other Muslim neighbors that now we know about as well.
Bevnai, will you have something to share?
As Tina mentioned earlier, one important community member is the elementary teacher at the 6-year-old school, and Lily is her name, and she grew up in Russia. She speaks fluent Russian and some Ukrainian, and it was just such a relief for our new friends to have somebody to talk to. And she has helped translate numerous times. She's a busy wife, mom, full-time teacher, yet anytime we need an in-person translator, Lilia is there. And she and her husband have become good friends with Joe and his wife. And so that's kind of satisfying for all of us. Also, I wanted to mention our McPherson YMCA. They've been great. I think a couple of days after Joe's family arrived, my husband Kent reached out to the YMCA, and Mateo was the head of the recreational programs. Well, he not only made arrangements for each of the families when they came to town to have a free 90-day membership, but also for the recreational programs. And that's how the 6-year-old plays softball for free. That's how she practiced gymnastics for a small fee. And the Ukrainian women have enjoyed Pilates and yoga, we understand. And the young men have enjoyed lifting weights and things. So we're very grateful to the YMCA.
Thanks, Bev. And Tina had a final thing to add, I think, about Lilia, the translator.
Well, at first, of course, we were looking at her translation abilities to be useful in things like, you know, the school tours, enrollment in the school, and maybe some important business discussions that we would have. We thought, well, that would be good to have her there. But as it turned out, we did have a personal concern that needed a really delicate conversation. And it just wouldn't have been right to use Google Translate. And there's no way we're going to call somebody for it. And so we felt very fortunate that we had Lilia there to handle the conversation, because it needed to be accurate. It needed to be productive. And we all needed to be able to speak without having to worry about language translation. And so if you're lucky enough to have a live translator in town who's willing to do that, it's really invaluable.
Thank you, Tina. And Anton, can we go back to the slide that says challenges on the top? So as I mentioned, we have had lots of blessings as a result of our welcoming the Ukrainians to McPherson, but there have also been challenges along the way. So I'm just going to share a few of those. First, I would tell you to expect the unexpected. Things will not always go as planned. Be flexible, go with the flow. It's helpful if you establish some boundaries and shared expectations from the start, which can help prevent problems down the road. There also will be language and cultural challenges. Not surprising. We have had good luck using Google Translate and other translation programs, but it's not perfect. And there are sometimes misunderstandings, as Bev shared about her story with the fried testicles. In addition, cultural differences can present challenges. The newcomers will be exposed to aspects of U.S. culture that are new, that are different, perhaps confusing and unfamiliar to them. So we encourage you to practice cultural humility. Remember that our way is not the only way to do things, and possibly not the best way. Other cultures have much to teach us if we are willing to listen and learn. A good resource for that is the Ukrainian Backgrounder. If you could go to the next slide, Anton, I just wanted you to see what this looks like. It's prepared by the Cultural Orientation Resource Team. It gives some Ukrainian history, information about the current conflict, plus language, identity, traditional gender roles, and cultural considerations, which you will likely find helpful. And there is a link to that in the resources that you will get. And if we can go back to the slide, please, of the challenges, you also need to prepare for what ifs. As a support circle, you might consider in advance how you might handle some of the what ifs. What if you don't like the newcomers? What if they don't like you? How will that impact your resettlement efforts? Sometimes people express themselves in ways that are difficult to read, particularly across cultures. Remember that every newcomer will have experienced trauma to some extent. At a minimum, they've had the trauma of leaving everything that's familiar to them under challenging circumstances to move to a new country and culture. Since the Russian invasion, all of our newcomers had already moved to at least one other country prior to being approved to come to the U.S. In some cases, newcomers may have experienced much more significant trauma than that if they've lived near or at or near the areas with intense fighting. It is not our place to question them about what they have experienced, but to be available to listen if they choose to share. Sometimes people have been traumatized to the point that it might be hard for them to form healthy relationships or make decisions. There's a good fact sheet on mental health awareness that can be helpful, beginning with explanation of the usual stages of adjustment period for newcomers and how to support them during those stages, as well as common mental health concerns for refugees and how to recognize and respond to them. So you can go to the next slide, Enton. Then another challenge we had to consider as we began this process was, of all the places in the U.S. they could resettle, why would refugees want to live in a small community in rural Kansas? What did we have to offer them? It's true that many refugees dream of landing in California, Florida, New York City, Philadelphia, Houston, or other cities which offer amenities we can never match. What we found we did have to offer is a welcoming, helpful community which has worked very hard to meet their needs and help them integrate into our daily lives and routines. If you can go to the next slide, please, Enton. We celebrated our 4th of July with them, then followed up the next month with the Ukrainian Independence Day. We also already mentioned the ladies' coffees, which is on the next slide, where we got together with the ladies in an informal situation. And then here we have the little 6-year-old who has been learning, having additional English lessons with one of the members of our group. For this is just some of the ways that we have found that we could welcome them that may not be available in a larger urban area. The last thing I want to cover is very quickly what are the other ways that you can sponsor? If you could move to the next slide, Enton, please. Yes. In addition to Ukraine, you can sponsor refugees from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, or Haiti that have been granted the same humanitarian parole as the Ukrainians, although the benefits may not be the same. You can move to the next slide, please. You can connect with those refugees on the Welcome US website, just like you can with Ukrainians. Next slide. Another option is through the Welcome Corps program, where refugees from any country are open to private sponsor groups. You just need to form a support circle of 5 or more people, fundraise $2,375 cash or in-kind support for each refugee you want to sponsor. Phase 1, which is available now, is resettling refugees from any country are available. Mostly so far, those have been from sub-Saharan Africa. Phase 2 will allow you to sponsor a refugee you already know. If you are aware of a refugee somewhere in the world that has been approved for refugee status, you can sponsor them. And this program is supposed to be up and running by year's end. So please watch for further information about that. And then next slide. There is Welcome Corps on campus. This is a new one-of-a-kind program for refugee students, which links higher education access to resettlement through the U.S. Refugee Assistance Program. Students, faculty, and other employees of an institution can form a support circle to assist a refugee student. Next, we have Engage to Change. Lions Club and Amazons have formed a partnership with Welcome US to mobilize local Lions Clubs and Amazon employees to join co-sponsorship programs. So if you happen to be in a Lions Club, happen to be an employee of Amazon, that's something you might want to check out. They hope to encourage other civic or corporate sponsors to do the same. Next slide. The Church World Service also has a new remote reception and placement program where local support circles can partner with placement community partners, provide reception and placement services for refugees, And this is for what are considered remote areas. If you live 100 miles or more from any resettlement agency office, this program is for you, and they will help you with that, with resettling. Then the next few slides are just helpful resources. You will get a copy of these slides and you can move on to the next one. So first, I have the names and email addresses of all of our support circle members. If you want to contact any of us, I know we would be happy to answer questions. Next slide. Then I have listed where you can find the fact sheets, how you can connect with Welcome US, and other, there's the Ukrainian backgrounder we just talked about. So next slide. Also, all of these links have things that you can learn. Refugee Welcome Collective has weekly lunch and learn sessions, which they have been having for a long time. You can go to their website and access all of those 1-hour webinars, which are on a myriad of subjects that are helpful to you as you resettle. These last two things, USA Hello and Settle In app, are both apps, phone apps that can help newcomers resettle here in the US. So just a couple of concluding thoughts. Next slide, please, Anton. Whoops, there are those. I've listed all the resettlement agencies. That's so they are there for you. The concluding thoughts are: begin with the end in mind. Keep focused on the ultimate goal of helping the newcomers achieve self-sufficiency. Provide guidance with mentoring, but allow the individuals or families to retain their own autonomy. Make decisions with them, not for them. We repeat, you can do this. We've done it, with no experience, and you can do it too. So we're already at 12:02 on my clock here. We do have, maybe can take a couple questions, Anton. Would that be okay?
I think that would be great. If it's okay with everyone, we'll just go a couple minutes over.
Who has questions?
I will note that Nancy provided me with a handout. I will email with our wrap-up a list of all these resources, so that will be coming to you.
And the PowerPoint too, correct?
If you would like me to share that.
I would like you to share that, please.
Okay, then you'll have a lot of wealth of information in your inboxes shortly. What final wrap-up questions do you have for Nancy and the team?
I'd like to connect with someone to how I can donate these little octopi. I have tried several possibilities. Nothing turned out. I think I found a home for them.
I think we have two little girls that would love them.
Oh, I would be so thrilled. Awesome. Okay. I'll reach out. Thank you.
Any other questions before we have our final remarks?
I want to say a huge thank you to Anton. We couldn't have done this without you.
Amen.
Thank you, Nancy. But the amount of effort your group has put into, and just the spirit of all of you, we've caught some of that today. So we're really grateful for the time that you all have taken. Thank you all for coming to this Ventures course. We have one more course yet this fall. It's Meet the Matriarchs. That's coming up soon. Go to mcpherson.edu/ventures to find out more. But for now, I just want to say I'm so grateful for what we've had to share today. This is so encouraging. And Nancy, if I had to say you had final words, it's probably going to be, you can do this. But let me invite you to send us out with whatever last thought you want us to have.
I just thank everyone who took 2 hours out of their busy schedules to listen to us. I hope we have given you some thoughts about this is something you might do, or you might know somebody who could do this. You heard Joe say how important this was. And so I hope some of you will, take the opportunity to try to do the same. We are here to help you. We've been through it now. We'd be happy to help you in any way we can. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you. Friends, that concludes our course. If you want to stick around and ask a few final questions, feel free, but glad you are here. Feel free to go. Bless you.